So my last video on finding your style roots got over 100 comments. But with that came a lot of questions, a bit of confusion, and some pretty strong opinions on what style roots should and shouldn't be. I've personally been using the style root system for over 7 months, and I've also guided many of my one-to-one clients towards using their style roots in a way that actually works for them. But I also know that it is so easy to get tripped up, and so in today's video I am breaking down the 7 most common misconceptions that I see about the style root system, so you can finally start using it your way and stop second guessing your style. Excited? Let's dive right in. Misconception number 1 comes up a lot, and that is that if the color of a style root don't suit your color analysis, you can't actually wear that style root. And I see that most often when it comes to the moon style root and people with softer coloring, because oftentimes you might like the darker, edgier, moodier aesthetics, but then when it comes to wearing black, you might feel like this color is not recommended or is too harsh on you. So here's the thing I advise everyone I work with. Your personal preference will oftentimes trump your recommended colors. Because I've been on that place where I would wear something that is theoretically in some of my best colors, but I would feel really bad because this item as a style wasn't me at all. And on the flip side, I've also worn colors that are technically wrong for me, but at the same time, the style of the item and how I was wearing it suited me, and so I felt confident and people noticed. So if you love the moon vibe and you feel that it very strongly expresses something about you, wear it, because that confidence is still going to shine through. But I also know that some of you like to combine color analysis with the style root system and you want to find that balance. And so here is when you have to do just a little bit of work to adapt the vibe of the style root for your personal coloring. So for example, let's say that you are a softer palette, so soft summer or softer autumn, you might not be able to wear the starkness of black. And so you have to find what is the darkest shade within your own color palette. So for example, if you're a soft summer and you want to wear black faux leather pants, but maybe the black feels really harsh in terms of contrast and color, why not try charcoal or deeper navy? And the same thing applies to jumpers. Maybe a black cutout jumper that is very edgy is going to completely wash you out, but you can achieve pretty much the same effect by using gray. It doesn't even have to be the darkest, because the vibe of the sweater is still going to translate that moodiness, edginess, and intensity, and it's going to do that without overwhelming your color. So the same thing goes with other style roots that maybe have a very notable color palette. So for example, fire often comes to mind because people associate that with red. And if you love fire but you can't do that bright of a red, why not tone it down a little bit and maybe wear coral or even dustier red, because all of that is still going to create that romantic, maybe more sensual vibe and create that confident energy, even though it might not be the brightest of reds, because it's going to match you and your coloring. And so it's all about capturing the vibe of the style root and the effect you want to achieve, not about replicating a color palette exactly. Misconception number 2 is that if you like the flower style root, you must wear skirts or dresses. And this one was actually captured beautifully by my viewer Dean, so thank you Dean if you're watching. But Dean said that as a non-binary person, they often avoided even looking at the flower style root because they assumed that it required dresses and more traditionally feminine pieces, and they didn't really enjoy wearing that. So let's set the record straight. Flower is not about wearing skirts, but is so much more about softness, lightness, delicacy, and maybe even a little bit of that romantic vibe. So you can express that feeling through colors. You can express that through fabrics, lengths, textures, detailing. All of that can help you to create the flower vibe, even on items such as trousers, shorts, and even jeans. So I have made an entire video about jeans for the style roots, and I do show you some examples of the flower and how you can express that in trousers and jeans. And so just like with the previous point, think about the vibe, the energy that you're trying to convey, and not necessarily restrict yourself to specific items. Misconception number 3 is very common because I think it's easy to get confused that if you like lighter colors, lighter shades, you must have the flower or the mushroom style root. So while flower and mushroom do lean light, lighter colors actually exist in almost every other style root. So for example, the stone palette will often feature lighter denim or paler neutral colors. The earth style root has those softer yellows, ivories, and creams, which are very natural colors. And even mountain will include some shades of caramel, beige, taupe, tan, all of those classic neutral colors. And so just because you're drawn to lighter colors, it doesn't mean that you need to have flower or mushroom. So the question you want to ask yourself here is, where and how do you actually like using lighter colors? So for example, do you like them in more monochrome outfits, in which case you might have flower or mushroom, or do you like them in a more of a contrasted space, which might lean into mountain? Do you also prefer them in more relaxed and practical items, so that may indicate stone? So to sum it up, light doesn't equal delicate, and you can wear lighter colors in more natural, flowy, clean, or effortless silhouettes. So the context of how you wear those lighter colors really matters. Misconception number 4 is probably the one thing that makes people not want to use the system or think that they're doing it wrong, and that is believing that you have to stick to only 3 style routes if you want to do it right. So this idea actually came from Ellie's original videos on the system, and she does say that it is really helpful to have only 3 style routes because it can help you to clarify your style. And I totally get that if you treat the 8 style routes as completely separate entities, if you have more than 3, it can feel very challenging to find items or outfits that actually represent that vibe. However, if you've watched any of my previous style routes videos, you know that I don't look at them as completely separate, but I actually combine them in this spectrum of style needs. And there are 4 different ones. The need to feel put together, more polished, the need to feel relaxed, the need to feel feminine, and also to feel different or unique. And so if you're looking at different needs, you can have between 1 and 4 needs that you're trying to express through an outfit. And here I do agree with Ellie that if we're having 4 different needs that we're trying to express in an outfit, it can be very challenging because it is hard to feel put together but also relaxed and have a bit of feminine touch and also unique items. Can be done, but it is very difficult. And so for most of us, when we're getting dressed for going somewhere or for a certain event, we would usually have 2 or 3 different style needs that we are trying to cater for. And so let's say that you have 3 different style needs, you might find that in order to fulfill those style needs, you actually can use up to 6 different style routes to create your outfits. So just to give you an example, you might find that you love using both stone and earth elements to create a more relaxed, practical outfit. And then you also like using moon to add a little bit of darkness. And then you like to add mushroom in terms of not using too many things, having a little bit more of a minimalist pared back vibe. And so even though in theory this is 4 different style routes, they actually only cater to 3 different style needs. And so this is where you have to ask yourself, what am I actually trying to express, or what style needs am I trying to fulfill with this outfit? Because if you don't know what you're trying to achieve, you can end up with a very messy looking outfit. And you can think of this like painting. If you don't know what you're trying to paint, you oftentimes end up with a little bit of a mess that doesn't really say anything. But if you know what picture you're trying to create, for example, you want to paint a sky, then you can use blue, pink, and even orange to paint 3 different looking skies. And so your style routes are going to be those different paints, those different tools that allow you to achieve the same effect, achieve that need. And so think of style routes as simply tools to fulfill different needs, and you can pick and choose whichever style routes you might need for the given day to fulfill that need. And if you're finding that you're not exactly clear on what your style needs are and how to express them, this is where a style strategy session will help. I will guide you on a journey where we're going to clarify your style needs, your style routes, and then how you can express that in outfits that suit your daily life and also your personal taste. So if you want to know more about booking a style strategy session, check the link below, and let's go back to the next misconception. Misconception number 5 is for all of us mountain lovers, and that is that if you are drawn to the mountain vibe, you have to wear blazers. So again, we need to take a step back and ask ourselves, what is the mountain style route actually known for or associated with? And oftentimes people are drawn, yes, to the structure, but it is because it allows you to achieve that more of a polished, put together vibe. And so I know that a lot of you don't like blazers because maybe you don't find them comfortable or you don't like how they look on you, maybe they don't suit your shape, and that's perfectly fine. Because if you like mountain, you don't have to actually wear blazers. So if you find that you're drawn to that more professional or tailored aesthetic, you can go for tailored trousers. And I know that this can be a bit difficult to find for different shapes, but it is definitely possible to find trousers that suit your body type. You can also try using cleaner lines and also pointed toe shoes. And these can absolutely be flats, they don't need to be heels. It's more about that kind of sharper edge that you use on your feet. You can also find that maybe the structure of the blazers is a bit too restrictive, but maybe a longer coat or even a longer cardigan that maybe has some military-inspired buttons or details can actually create that same polished, put-together classic vibe. And if you don't want to necessarily wear an item, you can even take a more of a structured bag, and that is still going to help you to achieve that polished, put-together feeling. And so ask yourself, are you drawn to mountain purely because of the structure of the silhouette of how it looks on other people, or are you drawn to it because of the more professional, polished vibes that it exudes? And if it's more about the vibe and not necessarily the item, you can absolutely create the same effect without using blazers. By the way, if you're enjoying this so far, please give me a thumbs up and subscribe, and let's get back into the video. Misconception number 6 is something that I see a lot of debates online, and that is that if you wear a lot of black, you must have the moon style route. So let's get one thing straight. Black is a color, it is not a style route, and it's actually found in many style routes. For example, in mountain, black is used to create that polished, elegant feeling and also to create contrast with paler shades. In stone, black might be used for practicality because black clothes are harder to get dirty, and stone is a lot about that practical kind of city urban vibe, and so that color is actually really suitable. And in fire, you can actually find black used for elegance because it's obviously a color that is associated with formality, and oftentimes you can find it even in things like black lace, more fitted pieces. All of that can create that more sensual, grown-up, feminine vibe. So as you can see, black is found in multiple different palettes. So in the moon style route specifically, black is used to create moodiness, mystery, or intensity. And it's a very edgy, emotional, even rebellious color. So if you don't resonate with any of those words, if this is not the vibe that you're trying to achieve, then you might not actually have the moon style route. You might have any of the other ones that I explained. So try and find what specifically draws you into the color black. And finally, misconception number 7 is one that I personally had to resolve for myself, and I also know some of my clients struggle with, and that is that your style roots need to stay the same all year round. And again, that kind of comes from Ellie's original interpretation, and I don't think it is incorrect, because there are some people that are very consistent with their style, especially if there aren't necessarily huge fluctuations in the weather. You might actually find that you're using exactly the same style roots throughout the entire year. But you may also find that, like me, you find your style roots maybe in the winter time and you're very happy, you create your outfits, and then the summer comes and you start creating outfits that look very, very different. And you start asking like, oh, did my style roots change? Did I do them wrongly? What happened in there? And so this is really okay because your expression of style roots can actually change with seasons. And especially if you watch my previous video and you find that for a given style need, you actually have quite a wide range, you might find that in the winter, you express that range, that need in one way, and then in the summer in a different way. And I've mentioned that for me, I love using black, I like using leather, maybe creating edgier, moodier outfits in the winter. So this is something that I oftentimes do. And then the summer comes and I start wearing brighter colors, bolder patterns. Even my accessories get a lot more interesting and funky. And so I'm definitely leaning into sun. But the core style need to kind of feel expressive, to feel a bit different from everyone else, stays exactly the same. I'm just fluctuating within my range. And so, for example, you might have mountain, and especially in the winter, I feel like this is a very, very easy style to express because we have coats, turtlenecks, blazers, pointed toe boots, anything that is a bit longer, heavier, structured. You might find that very suitable for your winter. But then the summer comes and you might find that it is too hot for shirts or longer tailored trousers. You might not want to wear pointed toe shoes because you have to wear sandals. All of that are considerations that you have to take into account. And so you probably will still have the need to feel polished and put together, but you have to dial it down on the range, on the spectrum, and maybe lean a little bit more into that neutral zone or even into mushroom. And so that's why some people find that in the summer, they're trying to use maybe sleeker, cleaner lines, maybe a little bit more understated outfits, maybe they use more classic, simple silhouettes, and that is more of a mushroom style route, but it's the same polished vibe that they're trying to achieve. It's just less with structured elements and more with that more pared back expression. And so you can find that seasons are one of the reasons that you might lean into a certain style route a little bit more. But you might also find that in different periods of your life, for example, if you change jobs or you change what you're doing in your life, you also might find that your style routes actually change. And you're not doing it wrong, you're simply accounting for different changes. And so just remember that style routes aren't boxes, you're not fixed in them forever, and it is totally okay to shift on different spectrums or even change your style routes if your needs vary quite a lot between different seasons. So let me know which misconception resonated most. I would love to hear that in the comments. And also let me know, should I do a part 2, because there are definitely a few more misconceptions that I can talk about. So remember to check my style routes playlist in here, and I'll see you in the next video.